The fourth movie, released in 2009, is called The Final Destination, instead of just being numbered like the rest. That is because it was originally intended to be the last movie of the series, but then it did really well, so they changed their mind and made a fifth. And then they were done for real. But now they changed their mind again. We find ourselves at a NASCAR race, and our characters are Lori, her boyfriend Nick, Hunt, the giant gaping asshole who's only here hoping to see a crash, and Janet, Lori's bestie. Nick's end of the bench cracks, and he gets the patented Final Destination ick, which means he's our seer. A bunch of small details happen, most notably someone whistling a song called Dixie. And since the subtitle cared to point out the name of the song, I assume that's our song for this movie. They're still doing that bit. Cool.
What kind of animal are you?
I'm a dolphin.
What? Just what? What?
In the pits, one of the cars takes off too early and snags a screwdriver with it from the pit crew, and it later falls onto the track and pops another car's tire, causing it to spin out and start flipping like food. A girl in the audience is sick and tired of this shit. The wrecked car gets hit by another car, which blows up and flies at the audience. And I always wondered why they only have these flimsy ass fences between the audiences and the track.
Is it safe to sit here?
Of course, there's a fence there. We're fine.
So that was a fucking lie.
I get that they need to be able to see, but can't they at least make the solid base a little taller? A cascade of explosions and crashes happen on the track, throwing more shit at the now fleeing and panicking crowd. Nick's cracked bench snaps as people run over it, creating a very convenient spike. But that's too obvious. Surely they won't kill someone with that 4 movies in. Some of the deaths here are extremely goofy. There's this racist couple who gets sliced in half by a metal panel, and they just switch to ragdoll physics and slowly collapse like Fallout NPCs. Another lady gets slightly trampled but survives it, only to have an engine thrown at her. A whole ass engine flying out of an exploding car in one solid piece, and not even tumbling. It just glides over and lands perfectly on her. The lengths people will go to get a flat tummy is insane these days. Bro lets his tired girlfriend rest and tries to make his way through the benches. But he didn't see that one coming. The cars keep trying to drive through the burning, smoking pileup instead of not. Y'all ain't Lightning McQueen. Just pump the brakes, habibi. Also, I feel like NASCAR cars are specifically designed in a way that makes them harder to explode than this. But we're too deep in this series to be asking why stuff explodes.
Hold it right there.
Yeah, about that. Apparently, these races usually don't stop, no matter how fucked up it gets, so long as the track is still usable. That includes the actual real-life disaster that this movie is based on, which is the 1995 Le Mans disaster in France, where the race kept going despite about 84 people dying, among which is a participant in the race. And apparently the goofy kills, like the couple sliced in half and the flying engine block, are all based on true events from that incident, according to the Wikipedia page. So I take it back. Engines can fly after all, I guess. Also, since they made a movie based on a real-life tragedy, they now have to make one about 9/11. There's no excuse. If you've already crossed into real-life events, you have to do the most notorious, and frankly most milked one ever. Back to me now. One such exploding car flies at the audience and causes a partial collapse of the structure, which crushes a bunch of people, including Janet and Hunt. He did say he wanted a crash.
You come here hoping to see a crash?
Of course it's to see a crash.
The monolith was listening.
Твой путь завершается. Иди ко мне.
Nick and Lori almost make it out, but then she stops for no reason, and a car blows up right behind her, turning her and the security guy beside her medium rare, and giving Nick a crash course on pole dance. Yeah, I'm afraid he ain't cut out for it. The vision ends and Nick does the whole freaking out and rambling thing, which pisses off some people who follow him outside to beat his ass.
What crash?
Nick just saved these people's lives, but Death decides that fuck this chick in particular, still, and retires her anyway.
Have you all lost your fucking mind?
Now we just need someone to get skewered by an exhaust pipe to match the tired puns. On a side note, the acting is noticeably worse in this movie, which makes it really hard to give a shit about anything or anyone. Our 4 heroes do the most logical thing possible after dodging death itself, and sit at a cafe called Death by Caffeine. Yeah. The table literally says it's coming.
What is it?
You would think a bunch of white people who just touch tips and nips with death would go to literally any other cafe in America. But these aren't your average white people, you see. These are white people headed to their final destination. So naturally they are gonna be a little more dense than usual. It just comes with the territory. They go over the vision, but Nick tells Janet to just forget about it, which is kind of a big ask considering she watched a girl get liquefied by a tire just a couple steps from her. But what else can they do anyway? Which is exactly what Hunt says.
Who cares why? If we made it, we deserved it.
You know, I don't know about deserving it. If it wasn't for Nick crashing out and dipping, despite literally everyone else there telling him to fuck off, they would all be chilling with Hades right now. Also, Hunt has a lucky coin he keeps fidgeting with. That'll be relevant later. The news show that a memorial will be held the following day at the McFuckface Speedway. Yes, McFuckface as in Ian's last name from the third movie. Laurie wants to pay respects, Janet is too freaked out to go, Hunt doesn't give a shit, and Nick says they were given a second chance, and so they should make the most of it. And he immediately starts mewing. Nick and Laurie meet Samantha and her husband at the memorial. She was the engine lady from the Vision, which was very hard to tell actually when watching this for the first time, because god fucking damn it, white people really do all look the same.
You're a hero.
No.
Then the black security guy walks up and introduces himself as George. But before they get a chance to talk, Mr. Dipshit walks up like,
Killed my wife.
Who the fuck starts a conversation like that? I just sat down.
no the fuck he didn't. You did. All George did was not let him back in to save her.
Sir, no. My wife's in there, asshole! I gotta find her!
But like, look at this guy. Does this motherfucker look like he could have saved anyone? Bro himself needs saving. It would take like 4 Jesuses for that face alone. Mr. Dipshit makes it very clear that he's the hateable character in this movie.
I'm sorry for your loss. Well, nobody lives forever, nigga.
His real name is Carter, by the way. And like, seriously? Y'all cooked up Colargian but couldn't come up with any generic white name and reused one from an older movie for this bitch? I'll continue referring to him as Mr. Dipshit though, because honestly it fits him. That night, Nick gets a cursed CGI nightmare where he sees a door followed by a bunch of random items and then a flame.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
He wakes up scared, but it's not believable at all. Like, even Laurie doesn't buy it and gives him a blowy just to make him stop. And spoiler alert, his 3-inch wonder ain't the only thing getting blown tonight. Then we see another clue. The wind blows a scalpel off a table and stabs a photo of Samantha in the eye. Not sure why Nick and Laurie would have such a photo of her and her husband, but whatever. Mr. Dipshit gets shit-faced and waits in his inbred truck outside of George's house until he goes to sleep. Then this dumbass, who is one beer from blacking out, grabs a giant wooden cross he made and a shovel, but he's so drunk that he accidentally knocks the tow chain loose. Then he stumbles over to George's lawn and just starts digging. Not sure what the game plan is here, and sadly, we never get to find out because his horseshoe charm falls and turns the obnoxiously loud radio on, which knocks over the remaining beers over the transmission, sending the car rolling down the road. As it starts moving, the tow chain unwinds and knocks open a gas nozzle he has in the back for some reason. Can we just take a moment to appreciate this truck? Big as fuck, ugly, loud, obnoxious, full of junk. It must be the result of countless generations of vehicular incest. Anyway, he tries to get into the truck to stop it, but the doors locked themselves, because of course they did. So he just gives up and calls the truck's mom a hoe, which it takes very personally. His leg gets yanked on the tow chain and gets dragged along the gas trail, which ignites from the chain's friction against the asphalt. George hears the commotion and walks out to this absolute freak show. And then the grand finale that KK kills Mr. Dipshit. And that is the other thing getting blown that night. It's worth mentioning that all the random shit from Nick's nightmare was involved in Mr. Dipshit's death, but because the nightmare wasn't really memorable and looked exactly like opening a video game loot box, I only noticed one of them before going back to check. Next morning, Laurie sees Mr. Dipshit's goofy-ass death on the news, so she calls Nick over and he recognizes George's front door on TV, saying it wasn't his nightmare. Nick then gets another cursed unboxing, foreshadowing the next death.
This is so ass, Carter!
This is so ass!
Oh yeah, I hate this. Instead of obscure clues that they have to find and piece together, Nick just gets visions of random stuff to look out for, which I think is lame as hell. Just put the clues in the bag, bro. There's a lot of fan service in this movie, starting now with Lori chilling in panties and a crop top. Which is good because I really need all the motivation I can get to keep watching the slop. God, the acting is ass.
When you're something freaky, I've seen that door before.
Nick has a meltdown and tells Lori he thinks the dream was a vision about Mr. Dipshit's death and that he just saw another one, but he doesn't know exactly who it is about. I know the characters aren't supposed to know what we know because they haven't watched 3 movies exactly like the one they're in, but my god, is it getting old. Like, having to watch them figure it out and their NPC acting is not helping. Like, can we just get a super cut of the clues and the deaths, please, and skip this movie? Samantha is stuck with her 2 crotch goblins, who are being menaces to society and chucking rocks across the road. So to get them to fuck off, she gives them some cash and sends them off to the arcade while she gets dolled up for girls' night. For those who don't know, girls' night is this thing where 3 or more girls get together in the woods, light a fire and burn a man in it while they dance naked around him. Once he's burned, they lay down and face up. Then, beams of demonic energy shoot out of their cooters and connect at the man's skull, where they combine and shoot up towards the moon. This ritual was very popular before Plan B hit the shelves in 1999, but now it's mostly just done for recreation. I got this story from a number I found on a public bathroom wall. Back to Sam. You know how hairdresser chairs have a pedal on the bottom that makes it taller? Well, this one has a faulty one and keeps going down on its own, which was in Nick's vision, as well as Joe over here. There was also a pair of scissors, a ceiling fan, and a hair iron, all of which you could find at a beauty salon. Notice anything? That blade kinda looks familiar. A bottle of hairspray slides across the counter and gets caught in a hair iron. While that cooks, we look at the ceiling fan that's starting to come off, but hanging on for now. While all that is happening, the hairdresser works on Sam's hair with scissors, and then that chair slips and...
I'm so sorry.
Nothing happened. The movie's just fucking with us. The 2 goblins then bust into the salon, and one of them slips and falls, making a mess. Annoying kids falling is just fucking hilarious, okay? The hairspray can is done cooking and rockets towards the ceiling fan, knocking it loose right on top of the floor. I think this is the longest we've been edged so far, stepping into gooning territory at this point, which is cool because I like gooning. Sam promises the goblins an ass kicking when they get home and tells them to get in the car. But little did she know, they were always 2 steps ahead. The rocks they were tossing earlier weren't random. They were strategically placed to get launched by Joe's lawnmower at Sam and basically to blow her brains out.
I've got my eye on you two.
Very poor choice of words.
Let this be a warning to all parents. Threaten your child enough times and you run the risk of them plotting your stone cold death. Also, the rock hit her in the same spot where the blade hit her photo earlier. I'm glad there's at least some small clues left outside the visions. Following Sam's impromptu LASIK, Lori and Nick invite the other 2 over to tell them about Nick's premonitions and research they did on the previous movies, to which they do the whole "it's just a coincidence bro" spiel. And while Hunt's unserious attitude,
We just lost a really hot MILF.
would normally be annoying, I seriously don't care about anything in this movie and I cannot take it serious. Nick reveals that the weird unboxing thing is actually how he sees the visions.
I was like these
Nuts.
random sounds and images, they really didn't make any sense.
It's not like the movie's giving us the rundown of the visions or anything, which I think is even worse because when something makes that little sense to him, it's impossible for him to miss it. Whereas in previous movies, the clues were hidden and they actually had to look for them, notice patterns and fill in gaps with deductions and theories, while Nick over here just is given basically a trailer for the deaths, and that's just it.
And then I had read what killed them, and I realized I'd actually seen how the next person was gonna die.
That's just so lazy. Janet, who's into superstitious mumbo-jumbo, believes them and asks who's next. Unfortunately, Nick forgot and says even if they intervene and skip someone, their destination remains final. They just take the next bus. Janet crashes out and dips, and Hunt calls them crazy and then also dips, but instead of crashing out, he declares full YOLO status and says if he's gonna die anyway, it's high time he tried all the kinky shit he's been curious about but couldn't quite ask for. And that's all nice and dandy, but there's one little problem. And this applies to the third movie too, actually. Why is research always focused on Flight 180? Surely Kim and Burke would be mentioned somewhere along the whole death rabbit hole. They are literally the only two to defy death and actually survive it. You'd think that's a more important thing to look into than the Flight 180, where everyone still ended up dying anyway. So here's how that would go. You'd hit up Kim and tell her you're facing the same thing she did. She will tell you about the whole resuscitation exploit. You will thank her profusely, then contact your insurance and make sure they cover everything, because there's no point in winning back your life if you're gonna spend it paying off a hospital bill. Then you go to a hospital and kill yourself, just enough that you die, but can still be brought back. And it's literally that simple.
Ain't tough. You're in the home stretch.
Anyway, Nick and Lori question their own sanity, but then Nick gets the third trailer, so he knows this is for real and he ain't tweaking. Nick holds on to hope that they can beat death, and their first step is to go back to the track to figure out the order, but he only manages to remember the first three, which is worthless because those three are already dead. George, the security guy, catches them and both of their pants turn brown. They tell him about the death theory, which he's kind of on the fence about, but he offers to show them the security footage from the incident anyway. Using the footage, they figure out the rest of the order, and it goes like Andy, who underwent the skincare routine of Vlad the Impaler, then Hunt and Janet, who got turned to pancakes, George and Lori, who got cooked, and finally, Nick, the shish kebab. Nick suggests that keeping Andy safe could break the chain. I assume he meant preventing him from facing death altogether and not just intervening when death's already onto him, because then it would just skip him, which only buys time and doesn't solve anything. Only problem is, short of putting him in a padded room like Clear willingly did, Death will always find a way. And that is assuming he believes them and is cooperative, which they never are. But at least finding him is not gonna be a problem, as his workplace is written on his jacket in the footage.
Grand State Customs.
The next day, our merry trio, yes, George overcame his skepticism and tagged along, make their way to Grand State Customs and just walk into the workshop like it's nobody's business. Then Lori demonstrates exactly why not everyone should be allowed in there, as she gets startled and shits her pants, almost doing Andy in herself. As far as trying to warn someone, this has to be the bluntest way to go about it.
I think you're gonna die.
3 of the people who left that stadium before that accident happened, they're now dead. You're gonna be next.
Like, damn, that's a 180 in attitude.
If you saw somebody die right in front of her, would it kill you to be sensitive?
Is it because Janet's a woman? Is this movie saying women have to be spoon-fed bad news while men can just take it head on? Is this movie sexist? Andy.exe stops working.
You serious?
So the task manager tells them all to get the fuck out of the warehouse, where Andy tells them he just wants to get his life back together after his girlfriend went to sleep, wherever. She was called Nadia, by the way, but I'll keep calling her Tired Girl because that's just funny. George tells him he can relate, as he lost his daughter and wife in a car crash because he was drunk driving, and now he wonders every day why them and not him. And it's a really touching scene, honestly. Or it could have been, if George's line delivery didn't sound like he's reading off a teleprompter for the first time in his life.
Every day I ask myself, how come it couldn't be me instead of them?
Retakes are a thing, guys. Even I do them sometimes, and I just make shit YouTube videos with a negative budget, which you can help with, by the way, by buying me a coffee through the link in the description. Like, come on, dog. If you're still watching this far into this long-ass video, I think I earned it. The opposite of holy water spills over and causes an electric malfunction, which causes the van on a car lift to be sent barreling straight towards Andy. But Death is edging us yet again, as the winch that the van is hooked to stops it, literally within an inch from dicing up Andy on the fence. He squeezes out, declares himself safe, and swaggers back to the warehouse. The winch is so excited to see Andy again, it literally flies. Unfortunately, it bonks a gas tank and sends it flying at Andy, which finishes what the van couldn't. You know, it's a shame that Brian's grill blew up in his face. He could have grilled us some mean Andy cubes for lunch now. Also, hold the fuck up. Bro died to a leaky gas tank, so technically, in a way, he is exhausted. Tired Girl's boyfriend is exhausted. I take it back. This movie's not so bad. The gang have a little meltdown, then decide to split up. George and Lori will try to find Janet, and Nick will go get Han. Both of which are next on the list, but Nick's not sure which one's first, since they both go at the same time. Janet gives a few pennies to the physical manifestation of choosing beggars, who's so upset about it, he throws one across the street, scaring some pigeons off. One of them is so scared, actually, that it shits itself. But since birds don't wear clothes, it actually shits Janet's windshield. While Nick tries to get a hold of Hunt by the phone, he sees this sign. Y'all remember Clear from the first two movies? Her last name was Rivers. Yeah, it's really cheesy. Clear Rivers. Therefore, the sign unlocks the next trailer, which features mainly water and pipe work. So he leaves Hunt a voice message telling him to stay the fuck away from water and decides to go find him in person. Meanwhile, Janet finally answers Dory's call, but it's only to tell her she'll call her back in a second because she's heading into the car wash. Yeah, you know what? This bitch deserves to die. What the fuck was that? Who does that? You either hang up or take the call for real. I'm not getting charged for a call just to hear you say you'll call back. And since they are blowing up her phone, this dumb bitch should have figured out that it's something urgent. Also, the car wash is probably bad news for her, as it essentially is just a big old pile of water and pipes. Laurie and George decide to go to the nearest car wash, which is kinda dumb considering America has a disgusting number of gas stations and car washes, but it's their only lead and time is tight, so Hail Mary, let's hope for the best. Inside the car wash, Janet finally takes the call, but it's spotty. She can only make out stay away from the water before losing service entirely. Yeah, as we've established, Janet is a dumb bitch. A common symptom of dumb bitch syndrome is the inability to follow simple, direct instructions, like the one this big ass sign outside has on it, telling her to retract her car's antenna. As a result, the brush yeets it into a fuse box that causes the little wheels moving the car along to stop. She panics and tries to get out of the car, which is indicative she's in the late stages of dumb bitch syndrome. You know what's the safest place to be inside an active car wash? Inside the car. She tries to drive out, but that doesn't do shit, as the car wheels are on another set of wheels that just spin against it. The car, worried that it might be suffocating Janet inside of it, opens the sunroof on its own. You know, these smart cars are really considerate sometimes, aren't they? Except this is actually shit news considering the whole car wash situation. This is yet another symptom of dumb bitch syndrome, by the way, because her sunroof has been acting up all day, opening and closing on its own, and she still took that shit to a car wash anyway. You know, I'm afraid it might be terminal. A water pipe that is very conveniently placed directly above the now open sunroof snaps and starts pouring a metric ton of water into her car. Sunroof? More like rain roof?
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
She tries to get out through it to avoid drowning, but only manages to get her head out when it decided to decapitate her. But it's not nearly strong enough, so it just traps her head in there. The blown fuse box now enters both nut clarity and lets the car move again, slowly inching Janet's empty head towards a mean-looking brush. But just before she gets the world's most violent makeup, George and Laurie shove their car in front of hers and push it back. Then Laurie gets out, forces the sunroof open, and pulls her dumbass friend out. That's what you get for ignoring your friend's frantic attempts to contact you during a seriously fucked up period of all of your lives. In a last desperate attempt from death, a heavy ass pipe snaps above them, but it's too short to reach the ladies, which I find very relatable, as I too struggle with a massive heavy pipe that can't seem to ever reach any ladies. Anyway, after brushing with Beth, Janet is skipped and safe for now, which only means it's now time to go hunting. Hunt is busy being a massive dick while simultaneously giving tiny dick to a random chick at a resort, just like he said he would. And I'm noticing a trend here. The first movie had no sex whatsoever or nudity, aside from the boys' bathroom scene, but that shit doesn't count. The second movie only had a few seconds of titties at the start. And then in the third movie, ass and tits had more screen time than many of the characters. And now, it's just straight up sex. This is an observation and not a complaint, by the way. Then he finally almost sees Nick's message about avoiding water, but a little shit in the pool shoots him with a super soaker and fucks up his foe. Bro does the only acceptable response in such a situation, which is to snatch the water gun and bully the kid. Bet he won't be harassing strangers again after that. Fuck that kid. Not literally, no. Hunt, get the Bro throws the water gun away, where it hits the pool controls and starts draining it. He can't seem to catch a break, however, as shortly after he sits by the pool, a stray golf ball from the course next door hits him, sending his lucky coin rolling out of his hand and into the pool, which is now being drained without anyone noticing. So, the coin gets sucked into the drain, whose grate has broken and is now greedily sucking anything it can get a hold of, just like a drunk college girl. Bro jumps in after his coin, but instead gets sucked himself, ass first, into the drain and blocks it. Then Nick arrives looking for him, just in the nick of time. I'm not entirely sure how he knew to come here, but okay. I also find it really hard to believe that not one single person sitting or walking around here sees Hunt stuck down there to the perfectly clear water in a pool that's only a few meters deep. Bitch, is you blind? Especially Nick, who is actively looking for him and knows that water is the threat. Regardless, it's now Hunt's ass versus the drain pump in a classic man versus machine showdown. But alas, as we all know, machine always wins when it comes to raw power. And after a valiant struggle, Hunt's ass folds and gets forced through the tiny pipe. The sudden shift in pressure causes the pump to burst skywards and starts raining Hunt's smoothie with his lucky coin on top. Very ironic how his lucky coin led him to his demise. As dumb as Janet is, he could have been alive if he'd only listened to her earlier.
Hunt, will you give the lucky coin shit a rest, please?
It seems Hunt is at an even later stage of dumb bitch syndrome than her. I wonder if they both came with it or if one of them infected the other. I hear it can be very contagious. Laurie and George have a classic
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
moment because Laurie is sad George is next, but he takes it like an absolute skibbity sigma male Giga Chad.
No, it's okay.
Or maybe he's just depressed, I don't know. And with that, Bro goes home and contemplates suicide, since, you know, he's dying anyway, so he might as well do it himself. Meanwhile, Laurie and Nick do what he calls safe-proofing the house, which is the stupidest thing I have heard in the series so far. And that is saying a lot considering everything we've seen.
We need to safe-proof this death trap.
You see, when you make something X-proof, it means you're making it resistant to X, right? So to safe-proof their house, that means they're making it as unsafe as possible. At any rate, Laurie wonders how George is so chill about it all. I'm not even sure how they knew George goes first. They were caught in the same explosion in the Vision. Not to mention that Bro is built like a van, whereas she's just a small girl, so her odds had to be worse. The only possible explanation I can think of is that even the explosions are racist over there.
Nobody lives forever.
She thinks Nick should stay away from her so Death doesn't score a double kill and unlock the next score streak, but he hits her with the "we both live or we both die" shit, which again would be very touching if Bro talked like a normal human being. I half expected him to drop a
Patrolling the Mojave almost makes you wish for a nuclear winter.
at any point during this scene. The wind knocks coffee over a newspaper and soaks it, except for a part that says action. So they spring to action and go get George. His front door is unlocked, so they just let themselves in, which is very rude. Like, what if Bro's in the shower or just taking a shit?
What are you doing here?
Hi.
Please get out, I'm taking a shit.
The house is dead silent when suddenly silence is broken by a noise from the bedroom. So they rush over there and find George hanging from a noose. They do the only logical thing to do in such a situation, which is to just stand there and watch until the soul starts leaving your friend's body and he starts convulsing. Then you help him down. But no worries, the rope snaps on its own anyway. Yeah, that's about as strong as I'm holding on right now. Bro's been trying to kill himself all day, but couldn't.
Skill issue.
As you've probably guessed, Death only likes it when they play hard to get. So now that George is trying to kill himself, it's keeping him alive instead of taking him. Hold on a sec though, let me cook. If Death wants them to run away so it can chase them, which it will always win, maybe the play is to stop running from it and start running towards it. That way it will not take them. But that would still leave the possibility of a bait and switch, where one of those times it actually lets them kill themselves, which would technically count as unexpected because they did it expecting it not to take them. Damn, this is like 3 layers of reverse psychology. Laurie uses all 3 brain cells that she has and concludes that this means saving Janet has indeed destroyed the list. So they pop a champagne and celebrate.
To life.
To life.
Before retreating to the bedroom for a threesome. One thing that dumbass Laurie didn't consider though, if the list is broken, why does Death refuse to take George then? He's supposed to be just a regular dude now. Death will not go out of its way to save or take him, but this intervention by Death should very clearly tell them it's still not done with them and is just waiting to do it the fun way. Seems like there's an ongoing dumb bitch syndrome outbreak over there. A few days pass and the couple have a newfound appreciation for life. So much so that they're going to Amsterdam. Nick's at home packing and Laurie's out shopping and watching Brain Rot with Janet, which is so base. Can we normalize going to the movies and leaving your partner at home if they're not interested? I would rather stay at home and watch the cinematic masterpiece that is 10 hours of spinning cat than go watch any Marvel movie. While packing, Nick drops a book, which gives him another trailer. Oh, so they aren't off the hook after all. Who'd have seen that coming? That is so crazy. I was so confused what the remaining 26 minutes were all about. Yeah, anyway, the trailer shows mainly water and the pharmaceuticals logo, which could be an ad for ribbed condoms, if you think about it. Nick stumbles and knocks the remote to the ground, which turns on the TV that is conveniently playing news about a new survivor they didn't know about. The cowboy type guy. Let's just call him Woody. He was later rescued from the rubble at the speedway. So, Nick rushes to the hospital Bro's at and calls George to meet him there. I was very skeptical about this randomized guy surviving despite never getting out, but when I went back to check, in the Vision, George directs some people, including Laurie, Nick, and Woody, towards a certain exit, but on the way there, a car crushes Woody. So by taking George outside, Nick actually did change Bro's fate, and he could totally end up stuck under the rubble instead of being oblivious immediately by the cop. Back at the hospital, some old racist crippled fuck called Mr. Subi is going through PT. Fun fact, Subi is also the last name of the detective who had like 4 seconds of screen time in the second movie. That's 2 recycled names in the same movie. They really just put all their naming power into collagen and are just now reusing shit. Or maybe this is the detective's racist pops, I don't know. The nurse is filling up a tub to bathe this shriveled up testicle, but then gets called out of the room and forgets to turn off the water. Somehow. So the tub overflows and the crippled fuck can't do shit about it. Yeah, not so tough now, are you?
Little bitch.
In the room directly underneath, Woody is woken up by dripping water, which quickly turns into a full-on leak. He reaches for the call nurse button, but it zaps him because it's wet. The button, not the nurse. The devices in his room start glowing from the water, so he throws himself out of the bed and painstakingly crawls away as the water keeps pooling in the room above, which is horse shit because no room is that airtight. The duo finally get to Bro's room and find him crawling on the floor, and again, instead of taking action like death itself has spelled out for them to do, they just stare at him and wait. Pour 1 out. Outside the hospital, George gets bad vibes, but he calls it deja vu. He says his wife used to say deja vu is God's way of hitting black people with a van. No, seriously, look.
My wife said that deja vu is like God's way.
Yeah, I shouldn't have said bro was built like a van earlier. Sorry, dog. While all these horrors are unfolding, Laurie and Janet have absolutely no idea about anything and go about their girl stuff. But then, out of nowhere, some bozo runs an RC car that looks exactly like the one from the speedway into Laurie's feet, which gives her bad vibes like George got. But in her case, it's probably PTSD and not deja vu. And it's definitely not a speeding van. She doesn't have to worry about any vandalism. Laurie buys sneakers because Nick likes her in them. W taste, by the way. Girls in sneakers and round glasses are my weakness. This is also good because it's a long walk from the mall to her final destination. Remember how I keep saying characters in these movies are dumb as hell? Well, Laurie doesn't tie the laces of her shoes that she just bought for some reason, so they get caught on the escalator steps, and everyone's biggest fear is about to come true. The escalator nears its end and her whole life starts flashing before her eyes, and then... What are you? 5? Getting sucked into an escalator is impossible. Laurie gets even better vibes from this, but still pushes it down because she is convinced death has already taken the L. Meanwhile, in a part of the mall that's under construction, the tarp they have hung up to keep the sun out loosens, letting in just a little bit of sun, which gets focused through the safety glasses on a pile of sawdust. Safety glasses? More like... danger glasses? Yeah, I got nothing. While all that is happening, Nick rushes through the mall because Laurie isn't answering her phone and doesn't know she's in danger. Bro then gets the next trailer, the key features being gears, fire, nails, a flammable sign, and an explosion in a theater. The explosion is also timed with an explosion scene in a 3D movie because Death has a sense of humor, apparently. At the construction site, the tarp flies completely off and turns on an industrial fan which pushes a trolley full of chemicals.
Anything off the trolley, dears?
A trail of angry fluid from the sawdust to a bunch of tools and a stockpile of combustible drums is formed. And all that fun stuff is located right behind the theater where Laurie and Janet are, by the way. Laurie's having a mental breakdown, but Janet keeps telling her it's just PTSD. The sawdust finally ignites and the chemical trail catches the fire and sends it to the trolley of flammable stuff. Someone's phone rings behind Laurie and you will never guess the ringtone. It was Dixie, the song from the track. A bunch of other small details that also happened before the crash happen here again, which Laurie remembers and crashes out. So Janet tells her if she doesn't shut the fuck up and let her watch the movie, she's gonna shove PTSD's nuts down her throat. Wasn't Janet the super sensitive, superstitious, freaked out girl like 20 minutes ago? How come she's already over all the death and shenanigans that she saw, let alone telling Laurie that it's all in her head? At any rate, Nick arrives and sees a bajillion theaters playing the gay movie, so he goes through them one by one yelling her name. I don't blame her given the circumstances, but he must have looked really stupid to the people inside.
Shut up, man!
He finally finds the right hall and Laurie comes to him. He tells her it ain't over yet and that George is now an 18+ Lego set and it's time to go. But Janet finally snaps.
No, I can't keep doing this, okay? You're both nuts.
Damn bitch, what happened to you? This to me. The two gave up on her and bail. Then the movie shows just how far 3D technology has come. Nailed it. I have the same problem with this entire series of events that I had with the subway crash in the third movie. Was this explosion always gonna happen and the loose ends just happened to be there? Or were all these poor motherfuckers just collateral damage around these three? If so, they must be very pissed that after all of that, Death only got one of them. While the merry couple are running down a stopped escalator, a piece of structure falls and breaks it, revealing its gear mechanism. Some hold on and don't let me go later. Lori's foot gets caught in the mechanism and it looks like this is GG. Also, she started bleeding from her mouth the instant her foot got crushed. Anatomy's crying in the corner over there. Is this what free bleeding really means? Anyways, the gears pulled her in and turned her into mincemeat.
Ladies on an escalator! It's going upstairs, so see you later! Bye-bye!
Hi bitch! Nick snaps back to reality next to George, who is telling him about deja vu, and all that we just saw was a vision, including the vision in it. Okay, as shit as this movie has been so far, this switcheroo got me real good. Maybe the predictability was to condition us for this final bait and switch. And maybe it doesn't even make that much sense, but who cares? It's a Final Destination movie. Nothing has to make sense. Unfortunately, poor George still gets turned to Lego. But Nick now has a very detailed idea of what's about to happen, so he rushes to the mall and doesn't waste time searching. The bus that triggered the last trailer on his way to the mall isn't here this time around, which kind of bothers me because the bus was kind of significant. It wasn't just random traffic, but you know, whatever. Instead of dragging Lori out of the theater and leaving Janet to her very deserved fate, this time he tries to solve it all at the source, the construction site. And he's here just on time, as the fire is already going. He pulls the fire alarm, but it's not even hooked to anything, so it doesn't do shit. Yeah, great idea, guys. Tear out the fire alarm in a fucking construction site. It's a good thing the OSHA dude already died in the third movie before they had to see this. Nick's next option is a fire extinguisher he finds over there, which does help him put out most of the fire, but it craps out on him at the last patch. So he goes full Isaac Clarke on the fire like it's a necromorph. And eventually puts it out. Unfortunately for him, however, the extinguisher he threw hit a workbench, tilting it, and the shit on it is slowly sliding off now. Even more unfortunate, and straight up frustrating honestly, a singular stray piece of ember flies over to another pile of stuff which was more than happy to catch fire. And so Nick's short-lived victory quite literally goes up in flames, but hey, this fire is far from the explodey stuff at least. He has time to figure something out, or he would have if not for the nail gun that finally falls off the table and starts spraying nails everywhere, piercing the barrels and pinning him by the arm to the wall. Look, I get that it's an industrial nail gun and packs a hell of a punch, but no fucking way it's doing all that from that distance.
Well, I just can't seem to get away from that spot right there in the middle. But even though it hit a very compromised spot on the torso, it still went completely sideways and did not penetrate. These nails are obviously not rifled or designed to fly through the air straight like that. So on the slow-mo, it looks like it actually did hit pretty hard, but it was probably tumbling through the air and went completely sideways before it even hit the torso, which is kind of what I expected. This was a very interesting test. I would say the movies are definitely somewhat unrealistic. I'm sure we all kind of knew that, but a powder actuated nail gun like this could absolutely be lethal and maybe even effective in a self-defense pinch, just not from 20 feet away. It's probably either point blank or nothing at all.
Nick never thinks to use his free hand to pull out the nails for some reason. I'm not saying it's guaranteed to work, I'm saying that's the first thing literally anyone would do in that situation. What he does try is pulling his arm by the elbow, which is not only the least effective way out, but also the most painful, and would pretty much destroy his arm in the process. He then notices the angry juice leaking out of the barrels and making its way towards the fire, and realizes how cooked he is. So he pulls a burning plank closer with his foot, then grabs it and swings it at the sprinklers to trigger them, and it works. The fire gets put out just as the barrels were starting to get really pissed. Bro diffused with 0.01 seconds left on the timer for real. I gotta say, that has to be the world's shittiest sprinkler system ever. The entire room was on fire for like, I don't know, however long it's been, and it didn't budge. If the fire needs to be that close to trigger it, they might as well just not bother installing it. Just put a guy up there with a bucket of water, that would be more effective. 2 weeks later, he's getting coffee at the Death by Caffeine cafe with the 2 chicks. Again, seriously guys, you still go there?
What's wrong with you? You lovely people. Crazy!
You saved a lot of lives, man.
No.
While while sitting there, Nick proposes the possibility that they still haven't changed anything, because what if instead of death, it's actually Nikocado Avocado haunting them? And he's always 2 steps ahead, as we all know, so surely they haven't won yet. And much to everyone's dismay, Nick is proven right, as a scaffolding of tires collapses and sends a truck swerving towards them, and it obliterates the 3 of them in the same original order. I guess the cafe can rebrand to Death by Caffeine and Trucks after they clean up everything. Or maybe even leave it as it is and just change the name. That make the experience more authentic. What's ironic about this is that on his way to the cafe, Nick did point out that the scaffolding looked funny to the guy on it. So that was Final Destination 4, and it was pretty mid, honestly. As I said, the acting was dog water, and I didn't like the whole mini visions thing. The clues and signs were a lot more interesting. That being said, I did like how all the visions had the words "it's here" integrated into them somehow. It's edgy and I like it. And it's also like a follow-up to the "it's coming" thing from the beginning. My favorite part has to be the twist at the end, that all the shenanigans were actually a vision, including the mini vision within it. That was pretty dope. It's the first time I actually got by these movies, so I have to give them props for it. But overall, I still think it's the worst one so far, so I give it a 3.6.
Not great, not terrible.